Cleopatra seems to be a very popular hot topic as of late, possibly because of the Netflix adaptation of the show, to which sparked my looking through my endless backlog, and I found that I actually had an adaptation of Cleopatra sitting in there, and I bumped it up on the backlog list, and ended up watching it. And then I researched it a little bit to find out exactly what were the behind the scenes of the production of this show and exactly what it was based off of and how historically accurate it might be. So, I bring to you Cleopatra by the Hallmark Entertainment. The Hallmark channel made this. But don't think that this is like one of those Hallmark Christian shows. No, this is Hallmark Christmas shows, that's it. This is more of a historical drama. Fictionalized historical drama based almost as strongly as it can be in history. Naturally, the dialogue, we don't know. People said what they said back then. That's where the fiction comes into play. It was based off a novel written by Margaret George, and I'm going to read to you a little bit of the behind the scenes of how she came to create such a novel. Author Margaret George read about Cleopatra as a young one. She always had an interest in the classics, and if you look through her backlog, you will find plenty. I believe she wrote one about Henry VIII. There's a bunch of stuff in there. She related to Cleopatra because she was dark-haired, much like she was. And in that era, beauty seemed to be more blonde to people, so that was pretty interesting for her. 2.5 years she spent writing the memoirs of Cleopatra, to which this movie is based, this film is based off of. She traveled to Egypt 4 times to research it. She went directly to the source, you see. She referred to many of the incorrect presentations of the legendary queen, because naturally there's plenty of incorrect presentations. Rome wasn't exactly fond of her, so Rome tended to take plenty of documentation. So if we have the strongest documentation of Cleopatra from Rome, we're probably getting a biased, skewed view of her. And Rome tended to view her more as Caesar's conquest, if you understand that one, rather than the political, intelligent leader that she was. So, she wanted to make her more historically accurate, as you would say, within the limits of the medium, the visual medium, of which there are many. She viewed Cleopatra fundamentally as a political leader who suffered from centuries of Roman propaganda and Shakespearean plays, each of which sought to depict her as a flighty one, as a bimbo, as the Romans would say. But the novel, finished-wise, was about 964 pages. It's big, but it's not padded, as she would say. By 97, it was published, alongside things like Henry VIII, Mary, Queen of Scots, and many other historical novels. I would highly suggest them because most all of them were very, very well sold. Almost every single one was a New York bestseller, if I remember correctly. That's all I'm gonna rate on for this, but it did receive an A-, the novel did. So naturally, Hallmark Entertainment decided, we're going to make this novel. We're going to adapt this novel into a show. It's going to be one of the most ambitious things. And I actually have a little bit of a behind-the-scenes little booklet here, to which I'm going to read to you from, as well, before we get into the nitty-gritty. As you see, it's right here. Cleopatra ranks among the most auspicious television productions in history. The project was executively produced by Robert Halmy Sr., who has found a forte in adapting classic works of literature and historical stories for television. Over the last few years, Halmy's productions have included Merlin, Alice in Wonderland, The Odyssey, Noah's Ark, just to name a few. Production on Cleopatra began in I'm just gonna spell it. Ouarzazate. Where's that? Where's that? Atlas Studios in Morocco. This was in Morocco, filmed in Morocco with Moroccan extras, etc. Prior to production, a convoy of 18 oversized production vehicles traveled by water and land from London to Morocco. Atlas Studios was chosen because it presented filmmakers with the opportunity to build an outdoor set for the ancient city of Alexandria. This set was one of the largest built for any movie, measuring 1/4 mile long. To build the set, 15 construction crew chiefs were brought over from Britain, and over 300 Moroccans were employed. Additional Moroccan locations may also appear familiar. Many locations were also used during the filming of Lawrence of Arabia, because they filmed Lawrence of Arabia in Morocco too. The entire company was airlifted back to London on a chartered jumbo jet. Filming resumed in Shepperton Studios, just outside of London. At the height of production, a record 6 sound stages were used at the studios. Commenting on the grandeur of Cleopatra, Halmy said, "I think this is going to be a remarkable piece of work. It's entertaining, you can learn something, and it's big. You know, you don't have to go to the movies for any more to see big. Just stay home and see big." This was theatre quality entertainment for the small screen, and starring some pretty big names. Billy Zane as Mark Antony or Marcus Antonius, Timothy Dalton as Julius Caesar or Julius Caesar, and then Lenore Varela, I believe, in her television debut. I could be wrong there, but her big named role, rather, because when you look her up, they say she's known for this one. Lenore Varela is a Chilean actress with Spanish ancestry, and her maternal grandmother, according to some sources, claim that she has Jewish ancestry. So she may not exactly be Egyptian, though she's not exactly Greek either, but they would tell you that this looks more to what the actual Cleopatra would have looked like, rather than the one on Netflix. And, I think this is like that middle ground, that fantastic little middle ground between Elizabeth Taylor and the Netflix show. There's two very big contrasts between Elizabeth Taylor and the Netflix show. And, you could agree and say that Elizabeth Taylor's a little bit too pasty for this role, and the Netflix one's a little bit too not Greek for this role. So they met in the middle, and they found somebody who looks olive-skinned, who doesn't exactly sound like she's from this region. She's got that accent from the Spanish ancestry and all this Chilean stuff. She's got an accent about her. I'll forgive it. This is a documentary. It's not intending to be a documentary. It's an adaptation of a book. Right? And the book does have dialogue, fictionalized dialogue that is written in to fill in the blanks of things that didn't exist, as always has happened. What was the words I was looking at? As Margaret George wanted to depict. She wanted to depict the most historically accurate she possibly could without sacrificing the drama. The drama would be fictionalized, but the historical accuracy, the events that happened. But the dialogue and the drama were fictionalized, dramatized, hyperbolized, romanticized. That's it, romanticized. This details the events of Cleopatra as soon as she came into power in Egypt and started to seduce Julius Caesar, or Julius Caesar. And then it ended in Julius Caesar's death. And then she started to get with Marcus Antonius, or Mark Antony. And then it ended in their deaths. It just depicts that period of her life, the most documented period of her life. We open with her being exiled from Alexandria. Alexandria, in this era of time, according to what I've researched in history, the Ptolemaic, Ptolemaic. I often would pronounce the P back in the day, but you're not supposed to pronounce the P. To which I would say, if you're not supposed to pronounce the P, then get rid of it! The Ptolemaic dynasty was founded by Alexander the Great after he had conquered Egypt during the height of Hellenistic power. Alexander conquered most of the known world, from the Mediterranean known world, that is. He conquered most of the known world, and he set his generals to rule these lands as he continued his conquests. One of those generals was Ptolemy the First. And Ptolemy moved the capital of Egypt to Alexandria, whereas it wasn't always Alexandria. Alexandria didn't exist prior to Alexander conquering the place. You know, Alexander made an Alexandria in every place he conquered, so as to say. There were so many Alexandrias out there, but the most popular one was the one in Egypt. I believe it's because it's the longest lasting one, to my knowledge. Alexandria was home to the most famous lighthouse and the most famous library, and I do not know if it's historically accurate to say that both survived by the point of Cleopatra. They claim in this that the Library of Alexandria burned during the Roman invasion of Alexandria. No, the Roman invasion. The Egyptian invasion of Alexandria. There were a lot of civil wars at the time. You know, the Ptolemies were not fondly looked at throughout history because they were foreign rulers. They were Greeks in a land of Egyptians. They were inbred because, as you know, with the Greeks and, well, you probably don't know. Well, in regards to pure bloods, you know, they're Greeks. They are in a land of foreigners, and these people that they're ruling over, they might consider to be lesser than them. So, these royal Greeks would be like, we're not going to mix with this rabble, we're not going to get with this rabble, we're only going to do it with the other Greeks, and more preferably Greeks of royal high status. And when there were none available, they would have to get with their own blood, so as to say, to keep that in the family, to keep the blood pure. Think of it like in the Harry Potter and the purebloods versus the mudbloods. They would view a mudblood to be like, what if a Greek royal Ptolemaic ruler got with a local Egyptian? Their child would be viewed as a mudblood, and that it's not good in their view. This is a lot of supposition, but it's pretty much historically backed up with how these people acted back in the day. You could... I'm not defending it, it's just history, you know? History is neutral. It doesn't care whether you like what happened or not. It doesn't care about how morally good or how more immorally bad the action was. All history is there to say is that it happened, whether it was good or it was bad. It happened. So that's all we could say, is that it happened. We can't condone it, but it happened. That's how the Ptolemies were like. And most of them didn't even care to learn the language of the locals. They didn't even learn Egyptian until Cleopatra came along. She learned Egyptian. She actually started to care about the people here. She started to act like one of the people here. She started to dress like one of the people here. You know, the Greeks, the royal family of Ptolemy, were Greek-speaking peoples during the height of Hellenistic rule. They were in contact with Greece. They were a Greek province, alongside the Seleucids. And if you look through Cleopatra's family tree, it's a pretty messed up one. But you see plenty of Seleucid royals also intermarrying into Cleopatra's family tree. So what you would want to do there is look through the Seleucid family tree to find out who and what intermarried and married into that. And then when you go into the Seleucid family tree, you find a very similar pattern as what's happening with the Ptolemaic tree. Greeks marrying Greeks because they want to keep the Greek bloodline pure. Because what happened in the Seleucid dynasty was that another general of Alexander's, he left in charge of that region and said, "You're the one who's going to rule this place. It's my province as I go conquer the world." So he goes off to do that, and he has two of his generals here. After hundreds of years, these countries become their own lands, but they trade royals across to keep the bloodline a little bit diverse enough, just diverse enough to not be so entirely inbred. So when you see a Seleucid in Cleopatra's familial history, it's Greek, more than likely. That's why all the historians suppose that she was Greek, because the Greeks didn't want to get with the rabble. They wanted to do only the high blood status, because that's just how you would view these Greeks to act. The Romans were very much the same. They wanted Roman ways. If your ways weren't Roman, your ways were inferior. And so they would not want to get with the inferiors. You can't condone the behavior, but the behavior historically happened. Whether it's good or bad, it happens, so we have to just leave it alone. So we learn from it and not repeat it, huh? But anyways, I'm getting off topic. But I would say that between the three Cleopatras that I know of, that we've seen on screen, this one looks the most historically accurate. She's not pasty white, but she's not incredibly darkly dark. She's somewhere in the middle. She's got that dusky skin, she's got the nosy nose, and she's got the frame of it. Her hair matches it when she's got her regalia on, when she wears the Egyptian regalia. She wears a variety of regalias, you know, the robes here, and then she's got Egyptian regalias. I wonder if the regalia's on the back somewhere. Let me see. Yeah, here we go. Here's the regalia on the back. That's what she looks like when she's wearing the Egyptian regalia with her hair. She's got all the fancy jewelry. She wouldn't wear it all the time. She might just wear robes and stuff, because that's easier to wear. There's too much time to put all this stuff on every day. This is more ceremonial. This might be more how she normally dressed. This is just a theoretical theory, or it might just be how the dressers in the show, the production designers, they say, oh, it takes too long to put this on, so we're going to have her wear something a little bit more easier to dress, a little bit more easier to customize, and so it takes less time to get her ready for the shot. This would be more for the ceremonial shots, where she's doing more ceremonial stuff, as to say, right? But her hair is very much straight, flowing. The hair is very important in this culture, you know. The finer your hair looked, the higher your status. If your hair looked like a bedhead hair, you would be seen as common rabble. You would be seen as low class. The more you looked after yourself, it showed the more wealth and social status that you had. If you looked like a rabble, you would be a rabble, if that makes sense. I didn't read the back here, but I might as well. For over 2,000 years, the legend of the Queen of the Nile has stirred the imagination Ascending to the throne at a mere 17 years of age, Cleopatra ruled as Egypt's last pharaoh for 22 years, easily winning the heart of the Roman Emperor Julius Caesar, or Julius Caesar, played by Timothy Dalton. They embark on a 2-month voyage down the Nile and quickly become devoted to each other. She bears him a child to whom they call Caesarion, or Caesarion. This is debated depending upon various sources, though many would assume, particularly the Roman sources, that this child is illegitimate and not actually Caesar's, that she was just trying to claim that it's Caesar's to keep Caesar beholden to her politically, and to keep Egypt's status politically powerful in Rome. Whereas Rome viewed Egypt as a conquest, Cleopatra wished to keep her country independent of Rome and self-sovereign, so as to say. But the country was indebted to Rome, and Caesar came to collect on that debt. She didn't have the debts to pay. They were in the middle of a civil war, and Caesar helped to quell that civil war by placing her on the throne instead of I believe it was her cousin or her nephew or something. I'm not quite too sure. The Ptolemy that they put on the throne was very young and very inexperienced. It was more the older sister that was in charge, and Cleopatra and his sister, I forget her name, Astorius or something like that, but they were not very fond of each other. So after the Civil War, the Ptolemy, the second to last Ptolemy, and the older sister were taken out, and she was put on the throne to rule Egypt. Blah, blah, blah. Anyways, but if you would look at Egyptian sources, they would probably say that, yes, Caesarion is Caesar's son. And, depending upon how intimate their relationship was, definitely a child would be more of a political power grab to keep that Egypt powerful and important to Caesar. So it makes sense to have them have a child, right? Keeping a close eye on the relationship, the Roman senators conspired to assassinate Caesar, Brutus. Et tu, Brute. His death this devastates Cleopatra. In her grief, she turns to Mark Marcus Antonius, played by Billy Zane. A Roman she could trust, because Marcus Antonius was loyal to Caesar. Their alliance angers Rome, because Octavius was now the ruler, joint rulership with Marcus Antonius, because, Marcus Antonius had the popularity amongst the people who were loyal to Caesar. So they split the empire, east and west. Mark Antony got the east, which was a lot poorer and a lot less peopled with lots of armies and stuff, and Octavius got the west, which included the Roman capital and all the legions. So he got the most out of the deal. Marcus Antonius wanted to keep Egypt self-sovereign. That's why he picked the east, so he could protect Cleopatra. Where we are. It angers Rome because Octavius hates Marcus Antonius. And then war is declared on Egypt and Mark Antony. Cleopatra and Mark Antony's fate becomes sealed in each other's arms as the Roman army closes in. Beautifully directed and stunningly photographed, Cleopatra reigns as one of the greatest love stories in history. It is a tragedy, the Shakespearean tragedy. This was filmed throughout 1998, released on television in 1999. I'm unsure why they cast Moroccans, but then again, I would be unsure why Lawrence of Arabia was shot in Morocco rather than in Arabia. Well, it probably depends on the political state of the region at the time of the filming, So maybe Egypt wasn't exactly the best place to film this in 98. Who knows? But Morocco is always an easier place to film in, probably cheaper too. So they filmed in Morocco instead of in Egypt. They cast local Moroccans instead of flying in all of the Egyptians to fill out the roles. But they did fill them out decently enough. You got to see some Nubians. She had Nubian gods. Nubians were very good warriors. There was a Nubian king who was a very mighty warrior. Then they had plenty of variety with the peoples here, because Egypt was very cosmopolitan with the region. People came from all over to come to Egypt, because Egypt was like this oasis of civilization in a land that was not quite as civilized as Egypt was. So people would come to Egypt, and so that's why there were lots of peoples here. But when it comes to, the royal family, of course, as I've said, it's very inbred, very Greek, very Hellenistic. Cleopatra was the first person who actually learned the local language. Now, in this story, adapted from Margaret George's novel, they said that she was the daughter of Isis, rather than the daughter of a named mother. Which might mean that the mother is not exactly important to Margaret George's story. She doesn't want to distract you over who her real mother was, only that she was the legitimate heir of the previous Ptolemaic king. And that's the thing, we don't know who Cleopatra's mother was. She could be anybody, but the only reason why we would assume that she would be Greek is because of the past psychological behaviors of these people in this time period. They would rather prefer a pure-blooded union. The only reason why you might think that her mother wasn't exactly recorded could be because her name was erased from history. As they do back in the day. Who knows why? Maybe the previous Ptolemy with the sister, they go oh, we don't like this woman. We're gonna erase all of her records. We're gonna erase all of it. And then Cleopatra comes in and says, no, don't do that. But she was much too busy trying to keep Egypt from falling apart to worry about the lineage and keeping the historical documentation. It's more about keeping the country alive and well in a time when Rome is slowly encroaching upon them to gobble them up. And Egypt has been on a steady spiral down in terms of power. The Rome was constantly growing in power, while she was constantly going down in power. So, naturally, she had to engage in a bunch of political intrigue to keep her country alive. During the time with Kaiser comes to quell the civil war in Egypt, Egypt was already heavily in debt to Rome, so Egypt helped to quell the civil war. He placed Cleopatra on the throne because he thought that this might have been a good investment. The investment of keeping Egypt stable so as it can generate enough wealth to pay off the debts that it owes to Rome. That's why he did what he did. He was an incredible general. He was an incredible tactician, and they show off one of the popular battles that he got into. I don't know if it was fictional or real, but he had a small legion, a couple legions, and then he had to face a massive army of 20,000. And he chokeholded them by getting them to drive into the square through this small little opening. And he got them to bottleneck in, and his Romans just steadily pushed them out and steadily piled up the bodies and scared the rest of them, and then they all scattered because they thought that they could never beat Caesar, the mighty general god king, and that he would wish to be. And so they fled. They captured the sister. They captured Ptolemy, but Ptolemy died trying to capture them. And the rest is history. If you wish to look this story up, by all means read Margaret George's novel. If you wish to, it's a lot of pages long, though, so maybe watch the adaptation. It's about 3 hours long. It is lengthy, but it is full of good information. Now, you could tell that for 1998, for a made-for-television budget, it's not going to be on the same quality as, say, Lawrence of Arabia was. But it's a made-for-television film. It's still impressive what they managed to do with that alone. With the sets, they try to make everything as real-looking as possible. They made a bunch of miniatures. They made a lot of stuff look very good. I liked this. I really did. And I thought that it might be interesting to bring out another point of view of the Cleopatra story that feels more historical drama, but it's not classified as a historical documentary. So that I give them a little bit more leeway with the casting. They cast Billy Zane as Marcus Antonius, and Timothy Dalton as these guys. They do this. They do this because naturally they would always bring in Britain's English people to play Roman generals and things like that. Because I don't know why they just tend to do that. Maybe it's because the Brits tend to give off this natural pompous aura about them that the Romans historically also gave off. That pompous aura. Maybe, I don't know, but you see it all the time. Big Britons playing Roman generals and stuff. This is what they did. So I'm not surprised at all with the castings of these two and the Romans. But I like the way that she looks. Lenore Varela. I liked the casting choice here. Would I have preferred maybe a Greek? Sure. Would I have preferred they cast Egyptians as their extras? Sure. But for what they were able to do for the time period they did it in, it's a freaking movie, man. It's not a historical drama. And even if it was a historical drama, you look at the dramas back in the day, they don't often cast people of pure ethnic situatorialness. From what I remember, let me see. Whatever I was trying to look up, I couldn't find because it was just way too obscure. But what I was trying to make the point of was that even in historical dramas, they don't tend to cast people of 100% accurate ethnicity when playing historical roles. It's just the visual storytelling medium to which they're showing you as they're telling you the history of what was going on. I don't know why, maybe it's just because it helps to combine with the visual medium of storytelling to keep your attention. Who knows? Either way, the casting isn't accurate, but this casting of Cleopatra feels more accurate than the Netflix casting. And, yep, that's about all I could say. It feels more accurate than both Elizabeth Taylor and the Netflix casting. It's pretty historically accurate. It feels very Shakespearean in its drama, but it does have a lot of the things that actually happened in a story. If you wish to look that up for yourself, be my guest. Take a look at Margaret George's novel, be my guest about that, and remember, history is neutral.